Due to a perfect match, my parents sent me to the bed of Bai Cheng. Bai Cheng, who despises scheming above all else, awoke the next morning to find me beside him. He hurled a stack of agreements upon me, stating coldly, 3 years, don't be too greedy. My explanations, along with my affections, were crushed within me. I dutifully served as a mere consolation for 3 years, never daring to overstep my boundaries. On the day marking the end of those 3 years, I quietly packed my belongings and attempted to escape the country with my suitcase in tow. However, I was intercepted by Bai Cheng, who had traveled a great distance to find me. His expression was fierce, and his voice icy as he proclaimed, 3 years have passed, and you wish to flee? 1. Upon awakening, my gaze immediately fell upon Bai Cheng, who was seated at the head of my bed. The room was dimly illuminated by a solitary bedside lamp, casting a soft glow upon his profile. His features remained sharp, yet his expression was weary, suggesting he had spent the night in sleepless turmoil. The disheveled bedclothes ignited a cascade of memories within my mind. Last night, Bai Cheng's sensitive phase had erupted, and my parents, seizing the opportunity, had thrust me into his room. The physiological advantages of an alpha weighed heavily upon me, as I found myself suffocated by the oppressive aura of his pheromones, relegated to a corner by the door. Pheromones convey their owner's emotions, and Bai Cheng's unmistakably communicated his unwillingness. His pheromones exuded a rich agarwood scent, while mine were merely a cheap hint of grass. I could not fathom why a premier alpha like Bai Cheng would have a perfect compatibility with someone as inconsequential as myself, especially when our pheromonal fragrances clashed so starkly. Yet, witnessing the agony etched upon Bai Cheng's face, I resolutely approached him. His pheromone disorder intensified his sensitive phase, rendering his suffering 100-fold greater than that of a normal alpha. I could not bear to see him in pain. Sensing my proximity, Bai Cheng's eyes suddenly snapped open, beads of cold sweat forming on his brow, his lips pale, and his gaze clouded yet still frigid. He commanded, leave now, procure an inhibitor for me, and I shall not pursue today's events. I feigned ignorance, my hand gently resting upon his thigh. The damp scent of grass entwined with the deep aroma of agarwood, slowly merging into an inseparable whole. In the next moment, I was yanked toward him with great force, engulfed by a tumultuous wave of chaos. The door had long been locked from the outside, and there were others waiting beyond. I could not bear his suffering, yet more importantly, I was driven by selfish desires. A long-held wish had finally come to fruition, and I was acutely aware of my own shortcomings. Before I could savor the sweetness of my desires, Bai Cheng, as if sensing my gaze, turned to face me. In the next instant, he brought down a stack of papers he held with force upon me. The fluttering sheets resembled a flurry of snowflakes, and I could only discern a few large characters on the cover page. A marriage agreement and also a divorce agreement. 2 copies. Bai Cheng had already determined the nature of all matters and prepared his response. 3 years. Do not be too greedy. I lifted my head, meeting his disdainful gaze. Noticing my eyes linger upon the divorce agreement, he scoffed. What? Is 3 years insufficient? His look pierced through me, and I replied, no, Bai Cheng. Do you remember me? You once helped me. Bai Cheng interrupted impatiently. So, you repay kindness with enmity? His brow furrowed, his expression filled with revulsion. I suddenly realized how futile my explanation was. Could I claim ignorance? Thus, I fell silent, swallowing all explanations and affections back into my gut. I did not glance at any of the terms on the agreements but flipped to the last page and signed my name. As Bai Cheng departed, he glanced at me for a long moment, leaving behind the words, each to their own. Do not expect too much before turning to leave. 2. My marriage to Bai Cheng was rather hasty. There was no wedding banquet. When the marriage certificate was in hand, I gazed at Bai Cheng's photograph. The distance between us was vast, and despite the photographer's insistence to move closer, a significant gap remained. Even in the photo, Bai Cheng's brow was slightly furrowed, and we appeared less like a newlywed couple and more like 2 strangers. On the journey home, Bai Cheng drove while I hesitated for a moment before taking a seat in the back. Are you moving in? Bai Cheng's voice was somewhat indifferent, lacking sincerity. Yet, I shamelessly replied in the affirmative. His gaze flickered through the rearview mirror, but I could not discern whether it held mockery. However, if I did not reside in Bai Cheng's home, I had nowhere else to go. My belongings were few, barely filling half a suitcase. After he deposited me at a villa, he left. For the following 2 weeks, I saw no sign of him. I diligently kept the house immaculate, prepared meals for two, extending lunchtime from noon to 1, and dinner time from 6 to 7, dreading that he might return to find no meal awaiting him. Until one day, I stumbled upon a photograph taken by paparazzi, capturing Bai Cheng emerging from the neighborhood entrance. I belatedly realized that Bai Cheng did not possess only this property. He had merely placed me in a convenient location. I searched the distance between my neighborhood and his, from the southern city to the northern city, a long, straight line stretching beyond the confines of my phone screen. It struck me that even though I was now Bai Cheng's legally recognized closest person, I seemed to remain as stagnant as I had been a decade ago. 3. My first encounter with Bai Cheng was rather cliché. The atmosphere at the 18th school was notorious, and encounters with delinquents were not uncommon. I had always been cautious, yet that day, my mind was clouded, and my body felt feverish. An ominous premonition urged me to take a shortcut home. As I stepped around the corner and caught sight of a group of individuals with earrings smoking, my instinct was to flee. Not long after, I was swiftly pursued. One of them kicked the back of my knee with force, yanking my hair roughly, and spat, "Where do you think you're running, good student?" My head grew increasingly dizzy, cold sweat trickling down my body, while my limbs burned as if engulfed in flames. The assailant's expression shifted momentarily before he laughed to his companions. "Still a naive Omega? Quite bold." His nose drew near to my nape, and in a desperate struggle, I managed to slap him across the face. Enraged, he delivered a fierce kick to my abdomen. What pride can a lowly Omega with the stench of grass in their pheromones possess? Pain surged through my belly, my vision began to blur, and a deafening roar approached, rousing fragments of my consciousness. I strained to lift my gaze, spotting a red sports car halting at the alley's entrance. A boy with dyed red hair emerged, confidently assuring those behind him, "Rest assured, with the first school so far away, your parents won't find you here." Following his line of sight, I caught a glimpse of the person behind him, high cheekbones, a straight nose, piercing eyes, and thin lips, clad in simple black attire. He remained indifferent to the words of the boy in front, yet sensing something, his gaze turned toward me. In that fleeting moment of eye contact, my heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively turned my head away. The ruckus before me continued, but all I could hear were the footsteps drawing closer on the concrete. The footsteps halted beside me, and I heard a low, displeased voice, "Make way." The alley was narrow, barely accommodating two people side by side. I blocked his path. I lowered my head, attempting to shrink back, my slender spine pressed against the rough wall behind me. After a prolonged silence, I cautiously raised my eyes, only to meet his gaze. He glanced at me briefly before turning to address the delinquents. "I'm speaking to you." The events that followed became somewhat hazy in my memory. I only recall that once the commotion subsided, the air, thick with the scent of grass, was laced with a hint of agarwood. Taking advantage of this moment of respite, I instinctively reached out to grasp the sleeve of the person before me, my grip firm as I implored, "Could you assist me?" When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital, where the doctor informed me that I had differentiated into an Omega. Something pressed uncomfortably against my palm. I glanced down to discover a black cufflink. Later, I learned that the individual was named Bai Cheng, a member of the Bai family from the capital. One high school was situated in the southern part of the city, while the other resided in the north. Had it not been for his whimsical decision that day, we would have existed like two parallel lines, forever devoid of intersection. I no longer harbored any expectations of his return. Yet, on a rainy night, Bai Cheng unexpectedly paid me a visit. His shoulders were drenched, yet he remained impeccably dressed in a crisp black shirt. My gaze instinctively drifted to his sleeve, and upon realizing the implications, I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. The villa was vast and desolate. I felt keenly aware of my status as a guest, hesitant to intrude upon his space without permission. Bai Cheng furrowed his brow but said nothing. He sat across from me, and after a prolonged silence, finally spoke. "I have resolved the matters concerning your parents." Upon hearing this, my mind buzzed, and I pressed for clarification. "What matters regarding my parents?" He looked at me incredulously. "You don't know?" Such a simple question, devoid of inflection, rendered me speechless. In Bai Cheng's eyes, my parents and I were inextricably linked, bound by blood in a manner that could not be severed. Thus, I chose silence. In truth, I likely already understood what he referred to. Initially, their relentless efforts to place me in Bai Cheng's bed stemmed from nothing more than a pursuit of gain, be it reputation or profit. They had failed to secure the former, yet they could always obtain a modicum of the latter. The trifling benefits dispensed by the Bai family were sufficient to alleviate their struggles for generations to come. In the end, I could only muster the courage to apologize. Bai Cheng scoffed, offering no response, yet I felt as if I had been struck across the face, my cheeks burning with shame. However, I am not a philanthropist. I must reclaim something in return. Bai Cheng leaned forward, his hands intertwined beneath his chin, his eyes obscured in the dim light, shrouded in ambiguity. The glands at the nape of my neck throbbed with discomfort, the scent of fresh grass wafting through the air. The familiar unease suddenly struck me. I realized my estrus period had arrived. A shameful dampness began to seep from beneath me, and my glands swelled with pain. An omega marked by an alpha becomes dependent on the soothing effects of their pheromones. The one capable of providing me comfort was merely 5 steps away. Yet, all that filled my mind were Bai Cheng's eyes, furrowed, filled with dissatisfaction and distance. As the scent of fresh grass intensified within the room, my body grew increasingly cold. Another coincidence led me to believe I was overthinking things. The salty taste of blood filled my mouth as I bit down on my lip, forcing myself to remain alert. If my previous actions could be excused by the presence of someone guarding the entrance, I could no longer find justification for my degradation this time. Though I dared not meet Bai Cheng's gaze, I felt as though his eyes bore into me, piercing my dignity like 1,000 needles. Faced with a perfect compatibility, even during his sensitive period, he had never lost control. Even at the peak of desire, Bai Cheng remained frighteningly lucid, unwilling to grant me a temporary mark. The room was saturated with calming pheromones, yet I still wept uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. Bai Cheng inquired as to the reason for my distress. I could only think that after this night, our paths would likely diverge irreversibly. Yet I could not voice this, so I merely pleaded with reddened eyes, "Bai Cheng, could you grant me a mark? I am in pain." Bai Cheng remained silent for a long while, the atmosphere in the room growing increasingly frigid. Eventually, he lowered his head, his canines sinking into my gland, causing excruciating pain and eliciting cold sweat, as if punishing me. Perhaps my mind was not entirely clear at that moment, for I had forgotten that Bai Cheng was inherently a responsible individual. Requesting a mark from him was akin to demanding acknowledgement of our bond. Thus, the following day, Bai Cheng presented me with a stack of agreements. He had always been a gentle yet rational person, his reason unwavering, and his kindness equally distributed among all. I had witnessed him in the rain, repairing a shelter for a stray kitten, and shielding a female classmate from the gaze of others during her menstrual discomfort by offering her his jacket. Even I, once a stranger, had received his kindness. But now, I stood as a lowly omega, driven by ulterior motives in my ambition to ascend into high society, clearly less deserving than a mere stranger. What about the inhibitors? Bai Cheng's tone was cold and detached, devoid of inflection. Suddenly, I recalled that due to my late differentiation, my glands had become somewhat sensitive and unique. I had always used inhibitors specifically tailored for me by my family. The previous batch had been exhausted, while the new supply had yet to arrive. I merely shook my head, unable to meet Bai Cheng's gaze, fearing I would encounter the disdain and loathing reflected in his eyes. The pain in my glands intensified, and my vision began to blur. Bai Cheng seemed to utter something, but I could not discern his words. His voice felt both distant and achingly near. An omega marked by an alpha, deprived of their soothing presence during estrus, risks irreversible damage to their glands. In my haze, I pondered the cyclical nature of cause and effect, the inevitable retribution. Through my blurred vision, I watched as Bai Cheng rose from the sofa and approached me step by step. He lifted my chin, his rough fingertips brushing my face with a pressure that left red marks. His fangs sank into my gland, and a sharp pain shot through me, causing me to clutch Bai Cheng's shirt and emit a muffled whimper. The scent of fresh grass gradually dissipated, replaced by the comforting embrace of agarwood, enveloping me like a warm bath. "Fang Zhichuan, I can help you resolve your parents' issues, and in return, you will assist me in navigating my sensitive period smoothly." A mutually beneficial arrangement. After that night, I moved into Bai Cheng's community. With just half a suitcase, Bai Cheng expressed surprise. "Is that all you have?" I nodded, settling into the back seat with a sense of resignation. Bai Cheng's residence was even more spacious than the previous house. He allowed me to choose my room, and without hesitation, I selected the one furthest from the master bedroom. A housekeeper took care of the cooking and cleaning, relieving me of those responsibilities. Even the simple pastimes I once enjoyed had been stripped away. My only remaining pleasure was to sit by the bay window, awaiting the arrival of the 22nd hour each day. There was a hint of selfishness in my choice of room. The bay window faced the villa's entrance. Bai Cheng was punctual. Every day at 22 o'clock, his car would appear promptly at the front gate. My gaze followed the vehicle, crossing the glass of the bay window and the windshield, landing on his face as he moved from the gate to the parking lot. If all went as expected, this would be our longest interaction of the day. Until one day, Bai Cheng unexpectedly returned home early. I was nestled on the sofa, engrossed in a television show, clad in a Pikachu onesie, when we unexpectedly crossed paths. Our eyes met, and I felt an unusual sense of embarrassment, hurriedly attempting to retreat upstairs without my shoes. Bai Cheng called out to me, "You need not hide from me." I turned my head just in time to lock eyes with a pair of round, sparkling eyes that had emerged from behind him. "This is my little nephew, and he will be staying here for a while," he announced. Before he could utter another word, I quickly interjected, "I will take good care of him." He remained silent, but the child, who had been clutching at his uncle's shirt, gazed at me with bright, inquisitive eyes. More precisely, he was fixated on my attire. The child's thoughts were uncomplicated. Thanks to a Pikachu onesie I wore, I swiftly grew close to Bai Cheng. We huddled together on the sofa, engrossed in his favorite show, Super Wings. Bai Cheng was thoroughly captivated, and so was I. As I retrieved an ice cream from the kitchen and took a couple of bites, I noticed Bai Cheng's eyes gleaming hungrily, nearly drooling with anticipation. I hesitated for a moment. "Can you have ice cream?" Bai Cheng nodded vigorously, prompting me to hand him another one. Feeling as though we had established a bond of shared delight, Bai Cheng inched closer to me and asked, "Xiao Chuan, what is your relationship with my uncle?" I gazed into his curious eyes and pondered briefly before replying, "I am his tenant." It was indeed the truth. Within this house, I was akin to any other tenant. He looked puzzled, "But my uncle has plenty of money, doesn't he?" A sense of pride swelled within me as I straightened my posture and shook my finger. "What I provide him is something money cannot buy." Bai Cheng's mouth formed an A shape. "Wow, Xiao Chuan, you are amazing." "Xiao Yu, you asked me a question, so I must ask you one in return," I ventured. "What type does your uncle prefer?" My heart raced like a drum. Although Bai Cheng had yet to return, I felt a nervousness akin to guilt, my palms damp with sweat. Bai Cheng, resembling a miniature adult, took a moment to think before elaborating. Long hair, big eyes, penchant for red dresses and black high heels. The indications were becoming increasingly evident, and upon hearing this, I was nearly certain that this person truly existed. Cautiously, I inquired, "Who is this person?" Bai Cheng replied, "Sister Jiang Xixin, my uncle's betrothed." I was taken aback, unaware that Bai Cheng had a fiancée, let alone that he held affection for her. "What are you two discussing?" Bai Cheng's voice was cold and near, brimming with displeasure. My back stiffened abruptly, fingers gripping the fabric of my clothing tightly. Bai Cheng, clearly startled by Bai Cheng's demeanor, lost his smile. His face paling as beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His reaction was anything but normal. Disregarding Bai Cheng, I hurriedly approached him and asked softly, "Xiao Yu, what is wrong?" "My stomach hurts," Bai Cheng replied weakly, his small face contorted in pain. Bai Cheng's household had a resident doctor, who promptly arrived, conducted some examinations, and inquired, "Did he eat anything unusual tonight?" I was about to shake my head when I suddenly recalled the ice cream. I gave him an ice cream. Before the doctor could respond, I heard Bai Cheng's sharp voice, "Children have sensitive stomachs. How could you give him ice cream?" My complexion drained of color, unable to defend myself. I had promised to care for Xiao Yu, yet he suffered such a fate under my watch. His gaze was like a frostbitten blade, piercing through me. "Fang Zhichuan, regardless of your intentions, you have achieved your aim. Refrain from any further actions, especially concerning the people and matters around me." Bai Cheng had always disdained such scheming, and my actions seemed to him like a calculated plot, even a malicious trap. I understood he was referring not only to Xiao Yu but to his betrothed as well. A bitter taste surfaced on my tongue as I nodded in acknowledgement, softly responding with an agreement. Xiao Yu's health appeared to be improving, yet I scarcely saw him again. Aside from meals, I secluded myself in my room. I planted a pot hose in the window box, nurturing it with care. As the plant thrived, my gaze no longer lingered on the door, waiting for Bai Cheng's return. I allowed myself time. When the pot hose filled the window frame, I would be able to let go of him entirely. Half a month later, Xiao Yu stealthily sought me out. Xiao Chuan. I've explained everything to my uncle. He knows the truth now. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Bai Jiao's small face still bore a hint of pallor as he looked at me with a pitiful expression, clutching a stuffed toy in his arms. He thrust the toy into my hands, a pained expression on his face. This is my favorite doll. Cuddle it to sleep every night. I'm giving it to you, please don't be mad at me, don't ignore me. I couldn't help but chuckle. I'm not mad at you. Bai Jiao's expression was anxious. Really? Then why haven't you come downstairs to watch TV with me? I was at a loss for words, unsure how to respond. He slowly edged closer. Actually, my uncle has realized his mistake. He regrets it. I secretly saw him smoking on the balcony that night he found out. I chuckled lightly, ruffling his hair. You should be sleeping instead of engaging in such antics at night. Bai Jiao playfully clung to me, his mischief evident. I haven't been sleeping well lately, fearing you might be upset. Come on, let us watch cartoons together or else I'll think you're still mad at me. With no choice left, I joined Bai Jiao on the sofa to watch cartoons. However, I kept part of my attention on the clock, planning to retreat to my room as soon as the hour hand struck 10. But today, Bai Cheng's punctuality seemed to falter. He arrived home at precisely 9:06, and by the time I heard his footsteps, it was too late to escape. Bai Jiao hid behind me, casting furtive glances, seemingly believing he was being discreet. Suddenly, I understood the unspoken conspiracy between the two of them. Moments later, Bai Cheng's voice resonated behind me. Apologies, Fang Zhichuan. I misunderstood you. Perhaps unaccustomed to apologizing, he swiftly changed the subject. There is a family banquet tomorrow. I've left your clothes here. I'll come pick you up in the afternoon. The prospect of attending the Bai family banquet for the first time filled me with both significance and a hint of trepidation. Just before stepping through the door, I felt a warm hand envelop mine. I looked up in surprise at Bai Cheng's profile. His voice was low, almost casual, just for show, don't be too nervous. Any flutter of excitement I had evaporated upon seeing her. Long hair, large eyes, a red dress, and black high heels. An elegant and charismatic woman, Bai Cheng's betrothed. She stood beside old Master Bai, engaging in cheerful conversation with him. When her gaze met mine, a fleeting look of astonishment crossed her features. In that instant, without thinking, I instinctively pulled my hand away from Bai Cheng's grasp. Ignoring his puzzled expression, I hurriedly excused myself. I'm feeling a bit unwell. Excuse me. I stepped out onto the terrace to catch my breath, gradually calming down. Just as I was about to turn back, a voice called from behind. Feeling tired? Jiang Xixin approached me, a feminine cigarette in hand. Care for one? I shook my head, observing her hunch her shoulders against the chill of the evening breeze, which was particularly vigorous, causing her to shiver slightly. I hesitated to remove my suit jacket and drape it over her shoulders. She looked at me with a hint of surprise, then smiled. You must know who I am, right? Aren't you afraid I'm here to declare war on you? Before I could respond, she continued, relax. I'm here to chat with you as your sister-in-law. Sister-in-law? I furrowed my brow, somewhat perplexed. In any case, it's all a business marriage. If I can't marry Bai Cheng, I'll just marry his brother instead. It's all the same. She shrugged nonchalantly. It's not the same, I thought, at least not for Bai Cheng. It seemed she could see through my thoughts, as she smiled at me. Bai Cheng feels the same, we share no feelings for each other. Essentially, we belong to the same ilk. But he chose you, which is rather unexpected, I admitted. She scanned me from head to toe, as if appraising an item for sale. Suddenly, it seemed she sensed something. You like Bai Cheng, don't you? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. She didn't require my answer, merely continuing, Bai Cheng is indeed gentle when he cares for someone, but gentle souls are often the most heartless. I hope you get what you desire, Sichuan. With that, Jiang Xixin turned and walked away. The night's cold gradually seeped through my thin shirt. I heard footsteps behind me. Even without turning, I knew it was Bai Cheng. He halted beside me, his tone indifferent. What did you discuss? I felt a laugh bubbling up. There was no need for such suspicion. We didn't talk about much. If you don't believe me, you can ask her. Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked away. Days passed, and my interactions with Bai Cheng were few and far between, while my relationship with Bai Jiao grew increasingly amicable. Perhaps it was because Bai Cheng noticed the ease between Bai Jiao and me, that his attitude towards me became somewhat courteous. Occasionally, during moments of intimacy, I found myself drowsy after being marked by him. Upon waking, I still lay on his grand bed. Bai Cheng sat on the sofa, massaging his temples. You're too fatigued. If you truly feel unwell, there's no need to push yourself. Newly marked omegas often develop a profound dependence on their alphas. Thanks to him, I had slept soundly. I glanced at the wall clock. Only 2 hours had passed. Even if it was merely 2 hours, it was still a transgression. I was acutely aware of the boundaries of our relationship. Such matters were not technically within the confines of our contract. I apologized. I'm sorry. This one tea happened again. Bai Cheng paused momentarily, but didn't tea respond. After finishing my shower and preparing to rest, I noticed a small mound beneath the blanket. Lifting it, I discovered Bai Jiao. A sudden clap of thunder startled the child, causing him to instinctively cling to my waist. Xiaochuan, I'm scared. I had heard Bai Cheng mention that Bai Jiao was an overlooked child among the extended family, his mother having passed away and his father dismissive of him. I held him tightly, striving to emit comforting pheromones, gently patting his back. It's all right. I'm here with you. Sleep now. Initially, things were fine, but the thunder outside grew increasingly relentless. Bai Jiao clutched my shirt tightly, trembling with fear, his cold sweat soaking through his back. I noticed his worsening complexion and felt a surge of anxiety, unsure of how to help. I searched online and found that children often feel more secure near their alpha fathers. I brushed Bai Jiao's damp bangs aside. Shall we go find your uncle? When Bai Cheng opened the door, the room was dim, illuminated only by a bedside lamp, clearly indicating he had already gone to bed. He wore the same black silk pajamas. Gazing down at Bai Jiao, who was holding my hand and huddled behind me, it struck me as odd. Although Bai Cheng and Bai Jiao were the actual uncle and nephew, Bai Jiao seemed to be more attached to me. I briefly explained the situation to Bai Cheng, who nodded, come in. Bai Jiao pulled me inside. When he noticed I was standing still, he tugged at my hand. I couldn't help but chuckle. Withdrawing my hand, go on, little you. As Bai Jiao stepped forward, he hesitated, his big eyes glistening with unshed tears, making him appear quite pitiful. Xiaochuan, one tea you come too? He sniffled softly. Bai Cheng turned to me, he seems quite attached to you. I steeled myself, I one tea intrude. I turned to leave, but a loud crash outside startled me, and an oppressive sobbing sound quickly followed. After taking a few steps, I couldn't resist turning back to embrace Bai Jiao. Looking at his frightened, pale face, I resisted the urge to complain to Bai Cheng. You should release some comforting pheromones for him. Children feel safer near their alpha elders. I apologize. I have no prior experience in this regard, Bai Cheng responded, and as the words left his lips, a wave of soothing pheromones enveloped me. My legs weakened, nearly causing me to stumble. Bai Jiao visibly calmed down, yet he still clung to my shirt. Xiaochuan, stay with me, please? I hesitated, glancing up to meet Bai Cheng's gaze. After a moment of silent understanding, he suddenly spoke. I one tea intrude. It took me a moment to realize he was responding to my earlier comment. Bai Jiao's grip on me remained firm, and I sighed in resignation. I moved the blankets and pillows to the sofa in Bai Cheng's room, only to be stopped by him. You sleep in the bed. I'll take the sofa. Our argument led to no resolution, and I reluctantly climbed into the bed. However, another issue arose once I was on the bed. The distance from the sofa was too great, and the soothing pheromones were too faint. Bai Jiao tossed and turned beside me, unable to settle, while my glands ached painfully. It was akin to a feather tickling me through my shoes. The faint pheromones were more disquieting than none at all. Bai Jiao turned to face me. Xiaochuan, I'm still scared. I glanced over at Bai Cheng on the sofa, his tall frame nearly 6 feet tall, awkwardly perched, his legs dangling off the edge, appearing quite uncomfortable. Bai Cheng, I called him softly. What's the matter? He responded swiftly, his eyes bright, as if he had not slept at all. I gathered the pillows and blankets. Perhaps you should sleep here. It's too far for you, and Bai Jiao can't settle. Bai Cheng approached, pressing my hands down, his warmth and the potent soothing pheromones enveloping me. You sleep on the other side. Bai Jiao can sleep in the middle. You needn't worry about what I might do. Upon hearing this, Bai Jiao quickly snatched the blankets from my hands and dove onto the bed, patting the covers, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Very well, I relented once more. However, when I awoke the next day, the scene was entirely different. Upon opening my eyes, I found myself staring at the black silk belt of Bai Cheng's robe. I was momentarily dazed, instinctively tightening my hold around his waist. Bai Cheng paused his typing. Awake already? I quickly withdrew my hands, glancing around to find Bai Jiao missing. Where's little you? He woke up quite early and went to do his homework. I lowered my head, attempting to mask my embarrassment. I'm sorry. You could have woken me. You were quite exhausted yesterday. Resting a bit longer is perfectly fine. I nodded absent-mindedly, gathering my belongings and returning to my own room. Yet, with summer storms frequenting the area, every few days Bai Cheng would come bouncing over to me, and I would take him to find Bai Cheng. Over time, Bai Cheng's room had become equipped with a set of blankets and pillows, intended for my use. I gradually grew accustomed to waking up each morning ensconced in Bai Cheng's embrace. Due to his demanding work schedule, I attended Xiao Yu's parent-teacher meetings in his stead. After the meeting, I received a call from Bai Cheng and spotted his car at the school entrance. Bai Cheng emerged from the vehicle and began striding towards us from across the street. Xiao Yu's mother, witnessing this scene, teasingly remarked, "Sichuan, your husband is quite handsome." As Bai Cheng approached, he clearly heard her comment and cast a glance at the parent. My heart raced. Just as I was about to refute, Bai Cheng interjected with a simple "thank you." On our way home, Bai Cheng expressed concern, saying, "You seem a bit off lately, and your appetite has diminished. I've arranged for a family doctor to take a look at you." I nodded in acknowledgement, surprised that he would pay such attention to this seemingly trivial matter. Although our intimate encounters had become infrequent and there were no signs of pregnancy, I still took precautions and used a pregnancy test several times before the doctor's arrival. Each result was negative and I sighed in relief. I thought to myself that as long as I wasn't pregnant, everything else could be resolved. However, the doctor's words caught me off guard. He stated, "You possess two types of pheromones, one is inferior while the other is superior." He then inquired, "Have you experienced a secondary differentiation?" I struggled to comprehend. Although I had undergone my initial differentiation quite late, I was certain I had only differentiated once. Yet, the report indicated the presence of two pheromones. The doctor furrowed his brow and continued questioning, "What are your symptoms during your menstrual cycle?" I recounted my experiences honestly. He shook his head. "A normal cycle should not be painful. Are you using a low-quality suppressor?" I retrieved the suppressants from my home and handed them to him. Since being with Bai Cheng, I had ceased using suppressants altogether. To my astonishment, the doctor's expression shifted dramatically after a brief glance at them. He produced a testing reagent and, after thorough confirmation, stated, "This is not a suppressor. It is a differentiation agent. It can elevate an inferior omega to a superior omega, but the process is excruciating, and the results are unstable, potentially leading to a defective omega." He added, "Due to the severe side effects, it is prohibited in the market." Where did you acquire this? Although these were words I could understand, their assembly left me feeling foreign and bewildered. Memories from years ago flooded back. The look of guilt and hesitation on my parents' faces when they first handed me suppressants. I had thought that sending me to Bai Cheng's bed to salvage their floundering company was their only act of treachery. Little did I know that this game had begun the year I differentiated at 16. Does Bai Cheng know about this? The doctor's voice pulled me back to reality. Instinctively, I shook my head, then fell into a long silence before managing to articulate, "Can I tell him myself?" The doctor acquiesced. I remained seated in silence until the living room lights were suddenly switched on. "Why is it so dark?" Bai Cheng's voice broke through the dimness, and I was startled awake, rising to my feet. Perhaps my expression betrayed my distress, as Bai Cheng frowned and asked, "What's wrong? Is the result unfavorable?" I opened my mouth, attempting to speak several times but ultimately lacking the courage to voice my thoughts. At that moment, Bai Cheng's phone rang, and I felt a wave of relief, urging him to answer. I set a mental buffer for myself. Once the call ended, I would be forthright with him. Regardless of the outcome, I would bear the burden. The voice on the other end appeared to belong to one of Bai Cheng's subordinates, clearly audible in the quiet living room. Director Huang said he had his reasons. Leaking company secrets was not his intention. "Actions have consequences," Bai Cheng replied coldly, his demeanor indifferent. "I do not concern myself with the process. I only care about the outcome." The call was abruptly terminated, leaving me in a daze. Perhaps my recent closeness with Bai Cheng had dulled my awareness of the man he truly was, seemingly gentle, yet ruthlessly decisive and merciless. Bai Cheng loathed betrayal, regardless of intent or justification. "What were you about to tell me?" His voice was low, losing its chill. The warm glow of the lamp softened his features, rendering him tender and concerned, as though his prior harsh words had never escaped his lips. Noticing my pale countenance, he furrowed his brow and leaned in, as if to brush my forehead with his. I recoiled instinctively, causing his hand to hover awkwardly in midair. I managed a weak smile, saying, "I'm fine." You should get back to work. My words lacked conviction, prompting Bai Cheng to retrieve his phone to call the doctor, but I stopped him. I gripped his sleeve tightly, trembling slightly from my exertion. Please don't ask him. Give me a little more time. I will tell you. Bai Cheng studied me for a moment before finally nodding in agreement. That night, Bai Jiao came as usual, clutching a pillow to find me. He had become accustomed to sleeping with me and Bai Cheng. When he tugged at my clothes, trying to pull me toward Bai Cheng's room, I gently ruffled his hair and said, Xiao Yu, why don't you go sleep with your uncle tonight? I'm not feeling well. Xiao Yu obediently nodded. After a while, I heard a knock at the door. I guessed who it was and quickly turned off the lights. The knocking ceased, followed by Bai Cheng's voice. I will be going to M country tomorrow. He paused. I hope that when I return, you will have the courage to tell me what has transpired. The following day, Bai Cheng departed early. When I came downstairs, I found only Xiao Yu seated on the sofa, engrossed in the television. After seeing him off to school, I returned to turn off the TV. My hand slipped, inadvertently switching from the animation channel to the news channel. The screen displayed the latest advancements in treating pheromone disorder, announcing that M country had developed an effective reagent for the ailment. M country was where Bai Cheng was headed. He wasn't going for a business trip. He was going to treat his pheromone disorder. Once he rectified his condition, I would be of no further use to him. How would he deal with me, the traitor? I, who had been meticulously orchestrated into his life from the very beginning as a soothing balm. My phone suddenly vibrated with a notification. A countdown appeared on the screen. Only 1 day left until the 3rd anniversary. This countdown had been set prior to our marriage. I had grown so comfortable in my life that I almost forgot that this union had originated from a clandestine transaction. I glanced out the bay window. The lush green vines had overtaken the glass, obscuring any glimpse of daylight. I thought to myself that now would be the opportune moment to sever this arrangement. Upon landing in a country, it was deep into the night. The cold wind hit me with unexpected intensity, a stark contrast in temperature. A message from Jiang Xixin appeared. I found you a handsome tour guide. Have fun. I pursed my lips, preparing to decline Jiang Xixin's offer, when I suddenly felt warmth envelop me as a mint-scented cashmere coat was draped over my shoulders. I whipped around to find a pair of smiling eyes staring back at me. You must be Xiao Chuan. I'm your guide, Aaron. The corners of the man's mouth curled into a slight smirk, his expression exuding a cheeky charm. He didn't seem like the trustworthy type, prompting me to take 2 cautious steps back. He appeared to be amused by my actions, and as he caught a glimpse of the words I was typing on my phone, he reached out, snatching it away, declaring, You, Jiang Jie, have paid me quite a sum. It is non-refundable and non-exchangeable. As if to affirm his statement, he deliberately initiated a video call to Jiang Xixin. Ultimately, I found myself getting into the car. The man spoke little, only offering brief introductions as we passed by notable landmarks, resembling a proper tour guide. My anxiety began to ease. Upon arriving at the homestay, I expressed my gratitude and dragged my suitcase inside. I walked ahead, with him trailing closely behind. Just as I approached the entrance, I could no longer contain myself and turned to glare at him. What are you following me for? He glanced at me, then at the house. This is my home. You live here? Didn't Jiang Jie inform you? I felt as if I had fallen into a trap. However, it was too late to find an alternative accommodation, and booking a hotel was no longer an option. I could only confirm repeatedly, You are not an alpha, are you? His expression turned peculiar as he paused before shaking his head. No, I am a beta. This seemed to promise a peaceful coexistence. Perhaps due to the peak travel season, the entire street was devoid of vacant rooms. Thus I remained here. Although Aaron was a beta, his culinary skills were delightful, and he was quite easy to get along with. Within a few days I had grown quite familiar with him. In an effort to sever ties, I had blacklisted nearly everyone from my past, with the exception of Jiang Xixin. From her, I learned some disconcerting news regarding my parents. She revealed that my parents' company had been driven to bankruptcy by Bai Cheng, who acted swiftly and mercilessly, leaving them burdened with debts exceeding hundreds of millions. A cold sweat broke out on my palms as I suspected Bai Cheng was aware of my situation. The next step would undoubtedly be to retaliate against me. As the clock struck 8, my phone vibrated twice, displaying an unfamiliar number, presumably a call from Xiao Yu. In the letter I had left him, I had stipulated that if he missed me, he could secretly call me at 8 each night. I steeled myself and answered the call. The other end was eerily quiet, filled only with heavy breathing and the howling wind. Xiao Yu? I called out, puzzled, but received no response. Xiao Chuan. Who is it? Aaron inquired. I felt perplexed and was about to hang up when the voice on the other end finally spoke, deep and laced with a stormy anger. Fang Zichuan opened the door. My hand trembled, and I abruptly ended the call. Aaron approached, looking puzzled. Who was that? Your face looks terrible. I felt pale, gripping my phone tightly, and after a moment I replied, It's nothing, just a telemarketer. Aaron clearly was not convinced and reached out to touch my face. The gesture felt overly intimate, causing me to hesitate. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the air. A chilling gust swept in as the door swung wide open, revealing a familiar figure standing outside. Bai Cheng stepped in, his gaze fixating on Aaron's hand, then traveling up to meet my eyes. Though his expression was devoid of emotion, it sent a shiver down my spine, compelling me to instinctively recoil. Bai Cheng's pheromones surged like a rising tide, swirling with a menacing intensity that pressed against the glands at the nape of my neck, causing them to ache. Aaron stood beside me, his complexion pale and beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Why are you running? He scrutinized me, snowflakes still clinging to his eyelashes, his voice as cold as ice. 3 years have passed, and you wish to escape unscathed? My throat tightened as I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. The agreement was only for 3 years. And what about me? Bai Cheng suddenly stepped forward, his large hand gripping my wrist with enough force to nearly crush the bones. While I was in the United States seeking treatment for your secondary differentiation aftermath, you were busy packing your bags. My breath caught in my throat. His brow twitched, as if he were struggling to contain something. The doctor said your secondary differentiation is unstable and requires long-term care. While I was matching genetic sequences to find the safest treatment for you, you were booking a flight to country A. I was momentarily stunned, my mouth agape. Weren't you going for treatment of your pheromone disorder? He shook his head. My pheromone disorder has been stable for quite some time. Then why are you still? I trailed off, feeling heat rise to my cheeks, unable to finish my sentence. Bai Cheng pulled me into his embrace, carrying the chill from outside. It's my fault. I had intended to clarify things with you upon my return, but I didn't expect someone to be so eager to flee. Bai Cheng's chest trembled, as if he were both amused and infuriated. I looked up only to find bloodshot veins in his eyes. This perpetually composed individual was now visibly strained. My confidence waned, yet I felt unjustly accused as I muttered softly, I asked you. Noting his confusion, I reminded him about the executive matter at your company. This seemed to genuinely amuse him, and he sighed, that's a different issue. Regarding your gland treatment, the team in the United States has already formulated preliminary ideas. I looked up at him. The best method is permanent marking. Xiao Chuan, will you give me a chance? On the day of my return home, the first snow of the season began to fall. I waited for quite some time at the airport for Aaron, wanting to bid him a final farewell. However, as boarding time approached and he had not yet arrived, I was left with a sense of regret. Just before takeoff, I received a text from an unknown number, the tone familiar. Xiao Chuan, safe travels. Your alpha is guarding me like a thief. Just as I began to read, darkness enveloped me as Bai Cheng covered my eyes with his hand. You haven't been resting well lately. Take a nap. When I woke and attempted to check the message again, it had vanished without a trace. The one most delighted by my return home was Bai Jiao. The little one ran a considerable distance to greet me at the community entrance, drenched in sweat. As before, Xiao Yu came to find me with a pillow, ready to sleep. However, now there was an additional tall figure accompanying him. I positioned myself against the doorframe, glaring at Bai Cheng. No, go sleep in your own room. Bai Cheng stepped back, and I thought he had relented, only for him to call out into the house. Xiao Yu. Behind me appeared a little one tugging at my clothing, gazing at me with pleading eyes. I looked at the one in front, then back at the one behind, sighed, and resigned myself to the situation. In early spring, I received a postcard from Aaron, depicting the landscapes of country R. Bai Cheng had tended to the potholes on the windowsill and leaned in to take a look, casually shoving the postcard deep into the drawer. Limit your contact with him from now on. Are you feeling jealous? I raised an eyebrow. He pinched the gland at the nape of my neck, where his mark had already formed. Yes, I've turned into a jealousy-fueled fiend. Xiao Yu rushed over, beaming with a perfect exam score, seeking a reward. Bai Cheng hoisted him onto his shoulders and headed toward the garage. Where would you like to play? Your uncle is treating. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the potholes, casting a golden hue on the ground. The mingling scents of ebony and fresh grass pheromones intertwined in the air, leaving it impossible to discern who provided whom with solace. It was as if two once parallel lines finally intersected at some pivotal moment, embarking on a shared journey henceforth, never to part again. The end of the story. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to our next tale.